Top 10 Most Evil Men. You will never guess what the number 1 evil man is. Like and subscribe for weekly videos. In the comments below, list one topic you think should be in a top 10 video and comment if you subscribe to this channel. The most unfortunate aspect to researching this list was the realization that I could do a top 100 most evil men and still have a multitude of people for a second list. The selection of this list is based not upon death tolls, but upon the general actions, and impact, or brutality of the people. From bad to worst, here are the top 10 evil men in history. 10. Attila the Hun. Attila was Khan of the Huns from 434 until his death in 453. He was leader of the Hunnic Empire, which stretched from Germany to the Ural River and from the Danube River to the Baltic Sea. In much of Western Europe, he is remembered as the epitome of cruelty and rapacity. An unsuccessful campaign in Persia was followed in 441 by an invasion of the Eastern Roman Empire, the success of which emboldened Attila to invade the West. He passed unhindered through Austria and Germany, across the Rhine into Gaul, plundering and devastating all in his path with a ferocity unparalleled in the records of barbarian invasions and compelling those he overcame to augment his mighty army. Attila drowned in his own blood on his wedding night. 9. Maximilien Robespierre. Maximilien Robespierre was ahead of the French unrest, and it was his contentions that made the progressive government murder the Lord without a preliminary. Likewise, Robespierre was one of the principal main impetuses behind the Rule of Dread, a multi-month post-progressive period in which mass executions were done. The terror ended the lives of between 18,500 to 40,000 individuals, with 1,900 being killed in the most recent month. Among individuals who were censured by the progressive councils, around 8% were blue bloods, 6% pastorate, 14% working class, and 70% were laborers or laborers blamed for accumulating, sidestepping the draft, departure, disobedience, and other indicated crimes. In a demonstration of fortuitous equity, Robespierre was guillotined without a preliminary in 1794. Ruhollah Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini was the religious leader of Iran from 1979 to 1989. In that time he implemented Sharia law, Islamic religious law, with the Islamic dress code enforced for both men and women by Islamic Revolutionary Guards and other Islamic groups. Opposition to the religious rule of the clergy or Islam in general was often met with harsh punishments. In a talk at the Fayzier School in Qom, August 30, 1979, Khomeini said, "Those who are trying to bring corruption and destruction to our country in the name of democracy will be oppressed. They are worse than Bani Grais or Jews, and they must be hanged. We will oppress them by God's order and God's call to prayer." In the 1988 massacre of Iranian prisoners, following the People's Mujahideen of Iran operation for Javidan against the Islamic Republic, Khomeini issued an order to judicial officials to judge every Iranian political prisoner and kill those who would not repent anti-regime activities. Many say that thousands were swiftly put to death inside the prisons. The suppressed memoirs of Grand Ayatollah Hussein Ali Montazeri reportedly detail the execution of 30,000 political activists. After 11 days in a hospital for an operation to stop internal bleeding, Khomeini died of cancer on Saturday, June 4, 1989, at the age of 86. 7. Idi Amin Dada. Idi Amin was a military official and leader of Uganda. He took power in a military overthrow in January 1971, dismissing Milton Obote. His standard was portrayed by denials of basic liberties, political restraint, ethnic oppression, extra-legal killings and the ejection of Indians from Uganda. The quantity of individuals executed because of his system is obscure. Gauges range from 80,000 to 500,000. On August 4, 1972, Amin gave a declaration requesting the removal of the 60,000 Asians who were not Ugandan residents. The vast majority of them held British international IDs. This was later corrected to incorporate each of the 80,000 Asians, except for experts, for example, specialists, legal advisors and educators. Amin was in the long run ousted, yet until his passing, he held that Uganda required him and he never communicated regret for the maltreatments of his system. 6. Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold II was King of Belgium from 1865 to 1909. With financial support from the government, Leopold created the Congo Free State, a private project undertaken to extract rubber and ivory in the Congo region of Central Africa, which relied on forced labor and resulted in the deaths of approximately 3 million Congolese. The regime of the Congo Free State became one of the more infamous international scandals of the turn of the century. The area of land privately owned by the king was an area 76 times larger than Belgium, which he was free to rule as a personal domain through his private army, the Force Publique. Leopold's rubber gatherers tortured, maimed and slaughtered until at the turn of the century, the conscience of the Western world forced Brussels to call a halt. 5. Pol Pot. Pol Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge and the Prime Minister of Cambodia from 1976 to 1979, having been de facto leader since mid-1975. During his time in power, Pol Pot imposed an extreme version of agrarian communism where all city dwellers were relocated to the countryside to work in collective farms and forced labor projects. The combined effect of slave labor, malnutrition, poor medical care and executions is estimated to have killed around 2 million Cambodians, approximately 1/3 of the population. His regime achieved special notoriety for singling out all intellectuals and other bourgeois enemies for murder. The Khmer Rouge committed mass executions in sites known as the Killing Fields. The executed were buried in mass graves. In order to save ammunition, executions were often carried out using hammers, axe handles, spades or sharpened bamboo sticks. 4. Vlad the Impaler. Vlad III of Romania, also known as Vlad the Impaler, was Prince of Wallachia 3 times between 1448 and 1476. Vlad is best known for the legends of the exceedingly cruel punishments he imposed during his reign and for serving as the primary inspiration for the vampire main character in Bram Stoker's popular Dracula novel. In Romania he is viewed by many as a prince with a deep sense of justice. His method of torture was a horse attached to each of the victim's legs as a sharpened stake was gradually forced into the body. The end of the stake was usually oiled, and care was taken that the stake not be too sharp, else the victim might die too rapidly from shock. Wikipedia has an article that describes, in great details, the methods of Vlad's cruelty. The list of tortures he is alleged to have employed is extensive: nails in heads, cutting off of limbs, blinding, strangulation, burning, cutting off of noses and ears, mutilation of sexual organs, especially in the case of women, scalping, skinning, exposure to the elements or to animals, and boiling alive. There are claims that on some occasions 10,000 people were impaled in 1460 alone. 3. Ivan IV of Russia. Ivan IV of Russia, additionally known as Ivan the Terrible, was the Grand Duke of Muscovy from 1533 to 1547 and was the primary leader of Russia to expect the title of Tsar. In 1570, Ivan was under the conviction that the world class of the city of Novgorod wanted to surrender to Poland, and drove a military to stop them on January 2. Ivan's officers constructed dividers around the border of the city so as to forestall the individuals of the city getting away. Somewhere in the range of 500 and 1,000 individuals were assembled each day by the soldiers, at that point tormented and killed before Ivan and his child. In 1581, Ivan beat his pregnant little girl-in-law for wearing shameless apparel, causing a premature delivery. His child, additionally named Ivan, after learning of this, occupied with a warmed contention with his dad, which brought about Ivan striking his child in the head with his sharp staff, causing his child's unplanned passing. 2. Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany in 1933, becoming Führer in 1934 until his suicide in 1945. By the end of the Second World War, Hitler's policies of territorial conquest and racial subjugation had brought death and destruction to tens of millions of people, including the genocide of some 6 million Jews in what is now known as the Holocaust. On the 30th of April 1945, after intense street-to-street combat, when Soviet troops were spotted within a block or two of the Reich Chancellery, Hitler committed suicide, shooting himself while simultaneously biting into a cyanide capsule. 1. Josef Stalin. Stalin was General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union's Central Committee from 1922 until his death in 1953. Under Stalin's leadership, the Ukraine suffered from a famine, Holodomor, so great it is considered by many to be an act of genocide on the part of Stalin's government. Estimates of the number of deaths range from 2.5 million to 10 million. The famine was caused by direct political and administrative decisions. In addition to the famine, Stalin ordered purges within the Soviet Union of any person deemed to be an enemy of the state. In total, estimates of the total number murdered under Stalin's reign range from 10 million to 60 million.